I'd like to call to order the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for August 1st, 2019. Will Secretary please call the roll?
James Carmen,
Present.
Christopher Hagan,
Here.
Malika Barlow,
Present.
Christopher Kammerer. Let the record reflect that Christopher Kammerer is not present. Michael Hyman, Michael Wood,
Present.
Alfred Fields.
Present.
Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Can I have a motion for approval of the minutes of the June 6th meeting?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed. A report from zoning staff?
Good afternoon, Angela Van, Planning and Zoning Administrator. No update, just like to welcome our two new members, Alfred Fields and Michael Woods. Welcome to the ZBA. And thank you for your service.
And welcome. And Mr. Wood, you get to vote today. You do. Our procedure for this proceeding will be that the applicant will make their case first, followed by questions from the board. After that, it'll be comments from staff, if any. From there, we would, after the staff has their application, we'll have comments from the public, if anyone's for or against the matter, and then we will go into executive session for a vote. There are 5 voting members, and you need at least 4 yea votes for your approval. Is there any declaration of ex parte communications?
No.
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 Very good. If anyone intends to speak today, would you stand and be sworn in?
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, we have no continued cases. So with that, we'll have the Zoning Board Case of Appeals number 3373.
A request by Jeffrey Cronin Gold of TDON Development Incorporated on behalf of Townhomes at Coniston LLC for a variance from the requirement of Section 94-309 G6D1 of the Zoning and Land Development Regulations to allow for the construction of townhouse units within the required 20-foot front setback. The approximately 0.71 acre site is located at the northeast corner of Coniston Road and Lambert Avenue within Commission District Number 5, Commissioner Christina Lambert.
Hello, Board. My name is Jonathan Keith. I'm with TDON Development. We are the development partners for the townhomes at Coniston LLC, the owners of the property, and the applicant. We're before you here today to discuss a request to reduce the front setback for 2 townhome units within a development in which we're proposing 11 townhomes on a piece of property within the city west of Dixie Highway. The property is located west of Dixie, just north of Coniston Road, and it's approximately 1.71 acres. It's zoned MF20. It is also pretty much the first multi-family development west of Dixie Highway in this corridor. So we're excited to break into this market. We feel very strongly about it, and I think we're bringing in a product that we believe is going to do well for the city. The property itself is bordered by commercial shopping center as well as single family. The commercial shopping center district lies between the property and Dixie Highway. In particular, there is a shopping center and a restaurant in which the property faces the rear of the shopping center and the restaurant. On the excuse me, on the west side of the property is single family primarily. North side is apartments and single family, and then to the south is shopping center. We believe that this property is a transition, even though the zoning is MF20 and allows for townhomes and other uses. Based on its configuration, we believe that townhomes are the best and highest use as a transitional use between commercial to the east and single family to the west. And for that reason, we've targeted townhouse communities for this particular project. We have worked strongly with staff to come up with a product that we believe will work best for this property. Staff has advocated, and we agree with staff, that the best type of product would be a rear-loaded townhome product in which the garages would face the rear of the shopping center, the adjoining alleyway, and the restaurant, and the front of the units would face Lambert Avenue, which is also would be facing a single-family residential neighborhood. The front yards of these units would be used for recreational gathering. It's going to contain second-floor balconies and first-floor patios, and so that would be the primary living area for residents of this community. The site plan consists of two buildings. One's a 6-unit building and one's a 5-unit building. I'm going to go back one thing. I want to show you one thing on this slide. You'll see that at the very northern end of the property, there is a restriction in the width of the property. The existing alleyway chicanes towards the west at the very northern end of the property, and there's a cul-de-sac as part of Lambert Avenue that also constricts the northern portion of this property. That is the location where we're having a difficulty in meeting the setback requirements for this project, and I'll go into further detail later. The site plan itself, again, is 2 units or 2 buildings. One's 5 units and one's 6. The 5-unit building is the one that's constricted by the alleyway and by the cul-de-sac, and the 2 end units, which are units 10 and 11, are the ones that are affected by the front setback restriction. In particular, you'll see this slide is units 10 and 11, and the dark dashed line is the required 20-foot setback line by the MF20 zoning requirement. And you'll see how the 2 units extend into the front setback. As a larger blow up, you'll see that those particular units, unit 10, front setback would have to be reduced to 12.7 feet, and unit 11's setback would be reduced to 12.5 feet. It's important to say at this particular time that townhouse development in itself is unique in that you try to create consistency in the architecture for townhomes. Very rarely will you see townhome developments where they have a hodgepodge of various floor plans and sizes of units. It just makes it difficult to market those particular types of units. In this particular case, we've taken every chance we can to manipulate the size of unit 11 in particular to try to create as little of a setback impact as we can, while still keeping the architectural motif of the building, as well as for that unit consistent with the rest of the development. Unit sizes are key as far as sales, and we want to be consistent there. This restriction causes the changes and our request for the setback. What we've done to try to mitigate this, and we do find this as being a hardship, and at the same time, we think we found ways to mitigate this. What we've done is we've enhanced the landscaping in the front of the building, especially in front of units 10 and 11. We believe that the landscaping for the overall development exceeds code. However, we've gone over and beyond on units 10 and 11 to help further buffer the landscaping associated with those 2 units so that we could mask the building and reduce its impact on front setback. Likewise, and we one of the things that we've done is made sure to maintain code requirement of 75% of the front yard being green, open space, so that the front yards, even for these units that are restricted by front setback, still meet code as it relates to front area and front yard minimum landscape requirements of 75%. In all, this particular aerial shows the two units that are in question as it relates to front setback. It shows how we're landscaping those front areas. It also shows the orientation of the rear setback, or excuse me, the rear loaded garage orientation to the alleyway and to the rear of the shopping center. And it also shows the orientation of the one single-family unit across from the cul-de-sac that would be directly affected by a reduction in the setback. We believe that not only the landscaping in front of the building, but we've also added additional landscaping and hedging along the northern property line of this particular project to help buffer any vistas and views from anywhere within the immediate area. Finally, this is what the view from the cul-de-sac would look like of our proposed development, in which you could see the added trees that we've placed in front of units 10 and 11. It also shows where we've enhanced the articulation, the architectural articulation of the building to help further advance what we're trying to do. We're very proud of this building and the way it looks. And we would continue to move forward in a fashion of trying to provide covered balconies for the second floor, covered front patios for the first floor. Doorways are inset, the front doors are inset to the building and are covered, therefore you don't have people right in that front setback area. So we feel that that's also an enhancement to the area. Finally, this is the view from of the single-family house across the cul-de-sac, if which is being affected by this front setback variance. And I guess in conclusion, and I'm here to answer any questions. Also, I have Jeff Cronegold and Damian Barr, who are the owners of Townhomes at Coniston LLC, here to answer any questions. They're sitting to my left, and they'll be here to answer any questions you may have. But I guess in conclusion, I think it's important to note that, again, architectural consistency with townhomes is important. And by changing the architectural consistency of the building, or inconsistencies by having to adhere to a setback that we cannot meet, we think is detrimental to the overall project. Again, we've done everything we can to try to soften and mitigate the front setbacks and any impact it may have in that area. We believe that the additional landscaping and the additional architectural articulation go a long way to addressing that. Alternatively, if we cannot get a front setback or this project is not allowed to be rear-loaded, it would force us to go with what's called a front-loaded townhouse project, where garages would face Lambert Avenue. And we think that would be the wrong message and sending the wrong message to this area. We believe that no driveway connection should be made to Lambert Avenue, as that's a single-family, children-oriented neighborhood, and we're trying to reduce all the traffic we can on that street and basically direct all traffic to the rear alleyway, which is the main corridor for that commercial and commercial corridor. Other than that, I think that we've answered, we've read staff report, we agree with their findings, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Questions?
Would you just do me a favor? Could you leave this on your prior slide? I just want to look at it one last time.
Which one is that?
No, the prior, thank you.
Your bet.
Have a question? No.
Chairman, a question for staff, if that was properly on the townhouse configuration, is there a maximum number of homes that can be in a row and a required separation?
Yes, the maximum number of townhouse units in a row would be 8 units,
Okay. And what's the separation then between?
20 feet in between,
Okay.
in between building units.
So the 20 feet that's indicated between the two buildings then is a requirement, minimum requirement?
Correct, correct.
All right, thank you. If I might, Mr. Keith, I like, very much I like the layout. I think it's well thought out. The problem I'm wrestling with, quite honestly, is you're here for a variance, and we sit here to commiserate with you and figure out that variance if it's at all possible. Personally, I think there are options that could avoid the need for the variance. Perhaps more drastic would be a reduction in the number of units to get perhaps a wider unit at the end and then meet the setbacks and eliminate the need for the variance. And for that reason, I have to look at it as a self-imposed scenario because you've chosen to put 11 units on the property. So,
And thank you. Just to remind the board, this particular property, as it's zoned right now, allows 14 townhouse units or 14 multifamily units. We've reduced the number of units to 11. Any more reduction in unit size or number of units makes this project unfeasible to us. So and I don't want to use financial instability or that as a hardship, because I know that the board rather would see other things like, every effort we can to make this project
Yeah.
work. But I'll be honest with you, if we reduce unit sizes, or if we reduce the number of units in order to avoid this variance, this project becomes infeasible to us, and we're going to have to reconsider developing in this area. And that's not a threat. It's just the natural thing the natural course of this particular project. Again, what we've tried to do is by voluntarily reducing the number of units, to try to avoid the number of units that actually would have to have a variance request, is one effort. The other one is that we've taken pains and efforts to try to do as much as we can architecturally with these buildings. We think it would be an asset to this particular area, and we're looking for anything you can do to help us with that.
and I appreciate that. You've chosen the sizes from a marketing standpoint, I'm sure, from a market feasibility. You've determined what the size wanted to be based upon your market target for the sale of these units. I understand all of that. I can't get away from there are 5 people voting on this, but I can't support it for that reason.
Okay, I
thank
appreciate
you.
that. Thank you.
Ms. Barlow? Okay. Any questions from staff? Any comments from staff?
Staff
Excuse me.
has to do, I have to do my presentation,
Okay.
so can I get through my presentation before I answer any questions? Okay, good afternoon, Linda Louie, planner for the record. So just to summarize, this is a variance request to the front setback requirement for the townhouse regulations and the zoning and land development regulations. So per the ZLDRs, the minimum front setback requirement is 20 feet. The applicant is proposing a 12.5 minimum front setback, thereby requesting a 7.5-foot variance from the code. As the applicant had noted, that the variance only applies to 2 out of the 11 townhouse units for the proposed project. So this is the proposed site plan. As you can see, the 2 impacted lots that are highlighted here are subject to the variance request, and they're located at the north end of the project site. And the shape and the depth of these lots are also impacted by the terminus of the cul-de-sac on Lambert Avenue, as well as the realignment of the alley into the project site at the rear of the project site. These are the factors the applicant has cited as the reasons for their variance request. This is a video of the site on Lambert Avenue panning left or west towards the subject site and to the cul-de-sac, the terminus of the cul-de-sac, where you see the mango tree is the area subject to the variance request. And then panning around the cul-de-sac, we are headed towards the properties that are on the other side of the cul-de-sac, which would be directly impacted by the variance requests. So as the applicant had noted, additional landscaping will be provided to screen the building form from the right-of-way. So as you can also see, Lambert Avenue is a short dead-end street, which also sees very limited vehicular and pedestrian activity. In terms of meeting the variance standards, staff believes that the application has met all 10 variance standards for granting a variance, and therefore staff is recommending approval of the request. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Any questions?
I have a question for staff, and I didn't do the research, but I was actually a little surprised to see that our code minimum was 20 feet for a setback for a townhome, because in my mind, I was thinking of other townhome properties in the city. The first thing that popped to mind was City Place, and I believe those townhomes don't seem like I haven't measured them, but they don't seem like they're set back 20 feet from the right-of-way. Does our setback vary by zoning district, or?
Okay.
Angela Van. You have to remember, City Place is a planned development. A lot of the places, so they came in and that was, kind of wrote their own requirements. You're correct, it is not 20, it's not 20 feet.
Yeah, so
Correct.
this is the MF20 zoning district, but we have other zoning districts where we have townhomes that are less than 20 feet
Some are less than
setback.
20 feet. The ones that were built just to the south of the convention center in Flamingo Park, those are actually 20 feet. So again, it just depends on, most people try to come in and actually build at code because they don't have to go through variances and all of that. But again, you have some special ones, that came in and actually changed it, City Place being one. I think the homes, Antique Row, those also came in, and it's a PD, and
Right.
wrote their own setback requirements.
Yeah, and I was trying to think, I don't know if is it Magnolia Court on
Yeah,
Dixie?
also it's a PD.
Okay,
And
but
also
all
wrote
those
their
seem to
own.
have less than 20 feet.
Yes, but they also came in and wrote their own
Sure.
requirements.
Okay.
Linda, can you just clarify what you understood the question was to help me, and your answer with respect to Michael, that you said 8 townhomes, but then it was that they could build in a row,
Side by
right?
side.
But 14 was what I understood she answered.
They're allowed a maximum, the density allows them to have a total of 14 units on site. The applicant is proposing 11 units.
Correct, but you had answered 8, so I wanted to understand what you thought
Yes.
the question was, because it seemed like we got 2 different numbers. The answer of 8 is to what question? Help me.
Okay, so the grouping of townhouse units, you're allowed a maximum of 8 units in a row. So the applicant has decided for the balance of the site to create 2 buildings, one with 6 units and one with 5
With
units.
the 20 feet, and then the additional units up to number 11.
Correct.
Right.
They have a separation.
I saw that, too. Right. That's the 20
So
feet.
that separation would be required at some point along the 11 because they can only have 8 sides.
We've got to put everything on the record for discussion.
Excuse me, Mr.
So you just need to repeat what you just said to me and
I was-
point it out.
I was just pointing out that side by side, from what I understood your response to be, that 8 units could be co-joined at one side before there needed to be a break in them of 20 feet. So the maximum run you can have is 8 units.
You can have a maximum of 8 units in a
Although they
row.
have 5 units
Correct.
here.
Right. So just for my own clarification,
Sure.
so for when I deliberate and then vote, 8 contiguous townhomes, the definition of townhomes that they're
Townhouse units, yes.
townhouses, yeah, is 8. Neither side, they are not exceeding 8. And then for this lot, it's a maximum of 14. And they have 11.
They have 11 units.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding, because
Yes,
it's been a
they-
while since I've been in
yes.
school with math. You can have 8, they have a 5 and a, they have
6.
less than 6. And then you can have 14 and they have 11.
Correct.
Thank you. And then my only other question was, is staff recommending, and then I can follow up, with respect to the additional landscape, that it does include shade trees? Because I saw in their rendering, palm trees, I don't believe are defined as shade trees, but so in their rendering in front of these units, but is that a staff recommendation, or had the,
Staff just recommended additional landscaping. There is a concurrent site plan site plan that's tied to this variance application, and we can ensure that the applicant does accommodate shade trees as opposed to palms, if the applicant is amenable to
Okay.
that, of course.
I have no further questions, thank you.
Just to tell you that all the additional landscaping placed in front
Speaking
of
to the
those
mic, please.
particular units are shade trees. And likewise, the city's landscape plans reviewer and architect requested that we reduce the number of palm trees, which we voluntarily did.
Okay. I was just wanting clarification, because your rendering had a bunch of palm trees in front.
There are some palm
Drawing.
trees, but in particular, in front of those units, there's many more shade trees.
Okay,
Yes,
I just didn't see it with my
Thank
eyes.
you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wood?
Mr. Kronengold, I just want to make a comment. I completely understand your need to maximize the development on the site. I think that your plan in moving from commercial to residential is accurate. Townhouses is the way to go, and step it down. And it's worked in many cities, and I think it's a good-looking townhouse. I also want to say that it's a unique property because it does rear load, and you're not buying a garage door and a front door. And so I think it's a really nice looking project and would fit there very nicely. That's all, just a comment.
And I'll just add to that, and also I want to commend them in the design and the fact that with that whole community on that street, the fact that it ends at a cul-de-sac to reduce the traffic of people coming in and out and everything, that I like the fact that you're utilizing that alleyway in order to, that's how you're bringing the traffic in and out the garage.
Thank you.
I guess we're kind of in executive session now. Okay.
Not
Okay.
quite, not
Okay.
I've got
guys,
more to
I
say
was
if
going to
we're
say,
in
I had a
that.
comment.
Yes. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of the project? Is there anyone who would like to speak against the project? Please identify yourself for the record.
My name's Christina Banfi. I represent the owners who own the commercial units directly to the east of the property. We're concerned with the use of the alleyway. Right now, it is very narrow, and there are commercial trucks for delivery constantly throughout the day, either sitting there unloading or driving through. And we would like to see what impact this, the rear-facing garages will have on the alleyway in relation to the commercial properties before we can approve the project. If there's any, a report showing if it changes the alleyway at all, what they expect, any issues with it, if there's any safety concerns, any complaints that will be from the residents with the use already of the commercial, the alley as a commercial loading and unloading zone. And until we have that report, we can't approve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one question for staff. Is there parking allowed in that alleyway?
It's an alleyway. Parking for the townhouse units will be provided on site, so it's not anticipated that there will be parking within the alleyway itself, yeah.
Trying to
They
force
do have, they have exceeded their parking requirement. So the required parking for the project is 2 per unit. They're providing a total of 4 because the garages accommodate 2 cars, plus they have the driveway that can accommodate 2, at least 1, so a 3rd car. So there is excess parking provided.
Mr. Chair. Relative to your last comment, the dimensions of the 2 impacted lots relative to the parking for additional cars on those, I can't read the length. Mr. Keith, can you tell me what the depth of these, of 10 and 11 are for the approach, the apron for the garage doors?
Well, as far as Unit 10 is concerned, or excuse me, Unit 11 is concerned, that building is built to the rear setback line of 10 and a half feet. So, and then I believe that unit number 10 is at 16 feet. But I could, give me a second, I could pull out the site plan.
That's close enough, but I mean, I think the point being that any vehicle that were to park there as an additional parking to the garage on a occasional basis might have an issue with hanging out into the alleyway.
Well,
is that fair?
So the driveway itself is 17 feet wide. So there is, and you know, all other parking spaces within the rear of that development are 18 feet or 19 feet deep, which is more than enough to park 2 cars within the driveways. So there'd be a maximum of 4 cars per unit.
I understand.
Again, as far as those 2 end units, the parking spaces as they're provided now, or those driveways, have enough room to accommodate a single car. Not necessarily pulled straight into the development.
You're saying on a
certainly
diagonal?
it could park diagonally. We have worked extensively with staff on that and have gotten past what we think is the hurdles that engineering and traffic engineering have had. We're still ongoing conversations with them, in which we'll have resolved before the site plan is considered by commission, or the plat, that is. Also, I want to make sure that everybody understands that the alleyway is a platted alleyway. It's not a service driveway for the shopping center. It is utilized by the city as a whole, not only for the shopping center, but for the restaurant. It also, there's a driveway right now on the existing property that utilizes that alleyway for access. It also, that alleyway connects other residential areas within the city. So I understand the commercial property's concerns, but I will tell you that the alleyway is there. It's utilized by more than just the commercial property owners. We're taking pains to make sure that no cars that are visiting this site will park within the alleyway. As part of the condition of site plan approval, we've agreed to repave that alleyway because it's in a terrible mess right now. And so that is one of the conditions of site plan approval, is to pave that alleyway. So I think we're going to be improving that area, which should make it a lot easier, not only for the commercial people to access their properties, but also citywide for anybody that wants to utilize that platted alleyway.
You indicated that the alleyway is 18 feet wide? Is that, did I miss?
The alleyway is 15 feet
15
wide.
feet, okay.
Yes.
Do we know what the terminus is going north on the alley? Does it spill out onto a street that there's access going all the way through if they need to?
I believe it goes to, I want to say, is it Rose Terrace or Rose? I don't have the site plan in front of me. Or the,
So the alleyway actually stops 1 block north of the site.
Stops as in
It dead
terminates?
ends, like the alleyway discontinues.
But is there an intersecting street before it does that going north?
Yes.
That's really my question.
Yes. Roseland.
Roseland Drive goes through there? Okay, know where that is, okay. Have you all, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
on the person who spoke last relative to the commercial side, have you guys met at all or talked about the issues that might be
No, This
co-shared
is the
there?
first time we've heard of this issue.
Okay.
Excuse me. No, wait a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Slow down. Did you have a question?
Well, it's along those lines of, and it would be governed by private HOA documentation, but would, in your experience with this type of product, would you typically include something in the HOA documents that restricts parking, or that, specifically, requires the homeowners or unit owners to agree to not park outside of the bounds of their driveway? I mean, I'm trying to figure out also, and I think this should ultimately fall upon code enforcement because the alley would have to be kept clear. But I also want to understand what sort of protections for the commercial owners can be placed to prevent that from happening.
Well, it's twofold. You have to remember, not only do they have garage parking and parking in the driveway, they also have on-street parking along Lambert and on-street parking on Coniston. So there's actually on-street parking that can be used in addition to the garage, in addition to the driveway. So I don't think, given the width of that driveway, the alley is going to park back there. So you can actually park on Lambert also. But again, because we don't count on-street parking, they actually met the code with the garages and the driveway. But it's additional parking on Coniston and Lambert.
Is it allowed on both sides of the road on Lambert?
I don't remember.
Lambert?
It looked like it was 20 feet of pavement, so it looked like that might be.
Well, there's no restriction to parking, so, yeah, cars can park on Lambert.
Okay.
Lee? Excuse me? Yes, sir.
Someone mentioned that the alley is 15 feet wide, so I'm assuming it's one way, north?
Yes.
Right, so there would not be parking permitted in the alley, whether it was someone visiting a resident or someone delivering something to the commercial property.
Correct.
That will happen, but it's not permitted.
It
So
would not be permitted.
guests that would come to these townhomes would park on the street in front. They wouldn't
Correct.
park in the alleyway in the back, right?
The project does exceed parking. There's parking in the garage, there's parking in the driveway, and there's also parking on Lambert. So they've
Right.
well exceeded their parking requirement.
Okay, and one other question. Well, I note on here the little divot that the alley turn makes. Is that a change in the current alley, or you're not changing the alley?
No,
Okay,
it's
you're just
platted
fo-
that way.
Okay, and you're going to repave the entire alley up to your property line?
That is correct.
So that will be a nice improvement, even for the commercial properties, right?
Ms. Barlow? Okay. That's all the questions. We'll go into executive session.
So I'll be brief. I just want to, my position is the fact that this board has regularly granted variance of 7.5 feet, which isn't very large, and encouraging development in our wonderful and beautiful city. I would like my colleagues to consider, if they are voting in favor of the variance, to consider that we include and make sure that that additional landscape of shade trees is there, for what that's worth. And then lastly, I just want to make a comment on the fact that that alleyway is a public alleyway, not just for the benefit. It's wonderful that the commercial entities have had, maybe domain over it and in that. But with respect to, I think any purchaser of these townhomes would know that there could be times if I come home in the middle of the work, not likely on Saturday and Sundays when I'm in and out of my property, then I am sharing that alleyway, that there are times there could be a delivery truck that's blocking, and I would probably include that in evaluating whether or not I would make this purchase or the value of it, so.
Comment?
And I'll just briefly add, when we first got our board packets, I looked in, and the first thing I saw was they were requesting a 7.5 foot variance, and I thought, oh, well, I don't know, let me read the backup. And then I came to realize upon reading the backup documentation, it's only for those 2 units. And to the comment about it being self-imposed, everything we look at is open to interpretation. So I respect that. I think when I looked at it, I thought in my mind, it is not self-imposed because the street terminates in a cul-de-sac, and that if it were not a cul-de-sac, the right-of-way would remain consistent, and the building face would remain consistent and would still fit within the 20-foot setback. It's only the fact that the right-of-way itself, which is platted and existing as a pre-existing condition, bulbs out because of the unique case here where it's a cul-de-sac and not a through street that creates that pinch point. It is the reason for this variance. So I feel it meets the definition of not being self-imposed. I do have concern having seen other instances where we have residential development backing up to commercial in other parts of the city, and the concern, not so much about the access, because both property users do have the right of access, and so certainly they have the right to have the driveway access points there. The concern is just if people are not following the rules and end up, if they have 3 guests over, and instead of directing them over to Lambert, they just say, oh, just park in the back, and all of a sudden the alley's blocked. So I don't know that there's anything we can do about that other than I think we would, because I don't know, and I'd turn to legal to see if we could place a condition, but I don't know that we could. But in your HOA documentation, maybe something that would that would indicate that property owners, or reinforce that property owners are not allowed to park vehicles even temporarily in the alleyway. I think it's critical for protecting the use of the through use of that alley the way it needs to be kept open. That's all.
Any other comment?
Mr. Chairman, one last comment, if I might. Just to be clear, relative to my comment on the self-imposement of this, so that, for the record, my vision of the self-imposing issue is that the developer decided to build 11 units as opposed to 10 units, which would have fit on the property without the setback. I mean, without the variance need. Okay.
Any other comments? With that, we'll entertain a motion. Except that I can't do it.
Sure, 1 second. And maybe for clarification of staff, the additional landscaping is something that's only been proffered. It's been shown on the site plan. It's been proffered voluntarily, but it's not currently in a condition of approval.
Keep in mind that there is a concurrent site plan review for the project itself, and we're still currently working through issues. And I can work with the applicant to ensure that that condition is met in the site plan. But
Okay.
yes, you can add a condition if you'd like to the variance request for additional landscaping in the front yard or shade trees.
Mr. Chair, I'd simply point out that as relating to landscaping as well as the parking issue in the alley, your question would be whether any of those pertain to the standards for approving a variance. They are certainly site plan issues, and you can make recommendations, but in terms of granting or denying the variance, your question is whether it meets the standards.
And in my opinion, it does only so much that typically when there's someone who's seeking a variance, they are going below our standard, and in theory, it's something that may create an adverse impact on others, and so the mitigation, and so in a lot of those cases, we're looking for something to offset that or mitigate the variance from the standards. And to me, the additional landscaping is the mitigation, for that variance, because it helps soften the fact that there's not as much landscaping landscaping space in front of the building as there is in front of the other units. And so, because the area for landscaping is reduced, it's being compensated by adding plant material. So that was, I think, the thinking along my lines. I'd leave it to the other board members to see if.
Yeah, and I've understood that this board has been able to do that in the past by making that part of the condition when we grant the variance. Is that not?
You can, for example, based on the member's comment, if you decided that that goes to the question of whether this is the minimal request required, that would be a relevant point to consider, but that is also one of your standards. So my point simply is that whatever conditions you impose must relate to one of the standards for approval.
So for clarification, tie it to one of my factors.
Yes, and that's your decision now whether it does, but my point is that you want to ensure that whatever you're imposing relates to the standards for approval. Whether it does is your decision, but
Right,
That answers your question?
yeah, and sorry for complicating
That's all right.
things, I don't know.
Okay. So I think I'll make an attempt here. I move that the Zoning Board of Appeals grant application, before I get into that, my understanding for the applicant, you can just nod or maybe come up to the microphone so it's on the record, is that you are not objecting to a condition that would require additional landscaping for the 2 units that are affected by the variance. Is that correct?
That is correct. Our plans already indicate the additional landscaping, including additional shade trees.
Okay. Thank you. I move that the Zoning Board of Appeals grant application number 3373, which is a request by Jeffrey Cronengold of TDON Development Incorporated on behalf of Townhomes at Coniston LLC for variance from the requirement of Section 94-309G6D1 to allow for the construction of townhouse units within the 20-foot front setback for the property located at the northeast corner of Coniston Road and Lambert Avenue. This motion is based on the testimony presented along with the application submitted in the staff report, which constitute competent and substantial evidence. The board hereby makes finding of fact that each of the criteria in Article 2, Section 94-38D6 of the City of West Palm Beach Zoning and Land Development Regulations have been met. In addition, the granting of the variance is made conditional upon the following restriction or stipulation or safeguard with I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning and land development regulations and consistent with the comprehensive plan of the City of West Palm Beach. And that condition is to further comply with variance standard G, public welfare. The variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. That the applicant agree to work with staff to provide enhanced landscaping, including additional shade trees in the reduced front yard setback for the 2 units that are subject to the variance.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Aye. Motion passes 4-1. Would you read the next case, please?
Zoning Board of Appeals, case number 3374, a request by Jason Schroeder for a variance from Section 94-304B2 of the Zoning and Land Development Regulations to allow a 3.2-foot rear setback where a 5-foot minimum is required by code for an accessory building on a single-family residential lot. The approximately .25-acre site is located at 426 Colonial Road within Commission District Number 5. Commissioner Christina Lambert.
Is the applicant present?
Good afternoon. I'm Jason Schroeder. The property I purchased at 426 had an existing garage on site. There was 2 lots joined sometime in the past. And what we're looking to do is put the lot line back in the center of the 2 lots. And that puts the garage at the 3-foot setback that was original on the original deed. So that's where the variance comes into play. The new code says 5 foot. The existing was 3 foot. And that's where the garage was built back in the 20s.
Okay. I think we'll reserve questions until after staff's report.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Elena Wooten, Associate Planner, representing staff in the Zoning Board of Appeals Case 3374. It's a request for a variance from Section 94-305 B2 of the Zoning and Land Development Regulations to allow a 3.2-foot rear setback for an accessory structure in a residential district where a 5-foot minimum is required by code, to provide for an option to split the lot at the property located at 426 Colonial Road. The subject property, as stated before, is about 2.5 acres. It's zoned single-family residential, low-density residential SF7. It has single-family land use, and it's surrounded by other residential structures. The subject property, which is lots 17 through 20, was originally 4 25-foot wide lots platted in the Colonial Estate subdivision. In 1925, the northern portion of the combined lot was developed with a home and an accessory detached garage structure. The southern portion of the lot, which is lots 19 and 20, were largely left undeveloped. The applicant would like to divide the lot along the original lot lines into 2 equal lots of 5,500 square feet, which is 2 50 by 110-foot lots. The applicant has a pending lot split application in the planning division. The existing home does meet the current setbacks, but the rear setback for the accessory building does not meet what the current code stipulates of 5 feet minimum. The existing rear setback for the accessory building is 3.2 feet. The lot split application is predicated on the existing home meeting all current setbacks in the newly created lot. The existing home does meet the current code, however, the rear setback for the accessory building does not. Code requires accessory structures in a residential district to have a minimum rear setback of 5 feet. The applicant would like to obtain a variance approval to reduce the rear setbacks for the accessory structure in a residential district from a minimum of 5 feet to 3.2 feet so that they could receive approval for the lot split, which would create the 2 equal lots of 5,500 square feet. So, in short, the applicant is requesting a waiver of 1.8 feet for a rear setback for an accessory structure in a residential district to provide for an option to split the lots. This is a survey of the parent lot, and this shows the plan for the proposed lot split. This shows the 3.2 current rear setback for the accessory structure. And this is the proposed northern lot if they gain approval for the variance and are able to split the lots. Here are some pictures of the subject property from the north elevation on Colonial and alongside the west elevation on Webster, and portions of the southwestern elevation These are some pictures from the southwestern and the south elevation on Nathan Hill. These are more specific photos of the accessory structure from the different elevations. This is a video of the subject site. I apologize for the shaking when I was walking, but it shows the front elevation on Colonial. And it's traveling down south on Webster. It's really just a street view of the property. You can see its fence. You can see the accessory structure from here, from Webster. And now traveling down, you can see the vacant lot. And there's a huge ficus tree there. Traveling down south towards the southern lot, facing out on Nathan Hill. It's a windy day. So the development would conform to the existing character of the neighborhood. The lots attached to this parcel and in the surrounding neighborhoods are of similar size of the newly created lots and have structures that are very close to the rear property lines as well. It's in staff's professional opinion that the requested variance does satisfy all the variance standards found within section 9438D6 of the city's zoning and land development regulations. And staff is recommending approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is here as well.
I have one question. The application is for a variance, but it states in here a waiver. Are they interchangeable? Are they one and the same?
Say again, Mr. Chair.
The application is for a variance,
Yes,
and in the presentation, it says request for a waiver.
that's probably a language thing. It's actually a variance, which is a deviation from the standard or the norm.
Question?
Two questions. Could you pull the slide up that has the building on it, that's the structure we're talking about? I don't know that we pointed that out.
The picture or the plan, the survey?
No, the picture will do.
Okay.
Is it the one on the western elevation?
This one? This is the accessory structure?
Okay.
Okay.
And which side of the structure is it the side to the rear that we're looking at, that's encroaching on the setback?
It's the south side that's encroaching.
Okay, so in the south elevation, is it the piece that's hanging off of the back of the building to the rear? Or is it the whole building itself?
The whole
If I may,
building.
it's on the south elevation there, it's the side with the recycle bins on it. You're looking at
Okay.
the lot line there.
So that's the lot line?
Correct.
Okay, all right. My only concern is if we grant and 1.5 feet is not a big deal. My concern is that we build, another building is built up against that, we have to theoretically grant the same variance to the people coming, up before us. And I know we can't consider that, but I'm thinking that we end up with 7 feet between the two buildings.
Angela Van, no, basically, if somebody comes to build on the lot, again, so that would be their rear. And the lot is 110 feet, so they would basically have to have 10.5-foot setback from the rear.
Okay.
So it's a little different in the way because of the way this was built and the way the lot, so it'll be a little different.
And again, from the standpoint of just ease of doing this, why wouldn't you just move the new subdivided lot the 1.5 feet to the south, if that's the right direction?
Because it's already set as the original lot.
I
And
understand.
it's on the easement along with all the other
I
properties.
understand that, but you have a subdivision, you're doing a minor subdivision, if I understand, to create the new lot as a building lot, correct?
Well, I wouldn't know how that's done. I'm going by the original lot lines, and all
Right.
we were wanting to do is put the original lot line back in place based on the original construction plans of the property, without
ask-
altering the southern lot.
Can I ask what that process is to put the line back?
Currently, this only requires a lot split, which is reviewed by staff. It'll still be a staff review, but it requires a little more in-depth in terms of moving the lot line. The paperwork is a little more, but it's still staff approval. And I guess one of the things that is important to note, a lot of the older areas in 1925 that was platted, they were platted with setbacks. That's how they were so this was platted, actually, I think with a 3.5-foot setback on the plat. But we don't recognize that. I mean, that's nothing to do with the city. So a lot of them you found were built that way in 1925, 1930, whatever the plat said before we had zoning regulations. But again, city doesn't recognize that, so even though Mr. Schroeder tried to basically show us that, again, we explained to him that we don't recognize that, we only recognize our current zoning requirements.
How difficult, in your opinion, would it be just to have, I mean, there's a survey that's going to be presented for the lot split, I would imagine, and it redefines the property line by 1.5 feet.
I mean, again, we try to keep consistency with what's in the neighborhood. When we look at any lot split, somebody can come in by right, even if you had, even if you had a 40-foot wide, say you had a 40-foot lot, and it was along the original lot lines, by right, we could not say no, even though it don't meet minimum requirement. Now, they're probably gonna build a house on it and the issue with the setbacks, but again, that's what we try to encourage people to come in, and if they're gonna go along the original lot line, the way it was originally platted, it should fit in with the neighborhood and consistency. That's why we encourage that way, instead of moving the property line a couple of feet. I know it's maybe small, but again, we just try to encourage them to keep the same pattern that was originally platted in those neighborhoods.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
That I do then, I think, I do have a question about, looking at the picture, I see an FPL pole. Is there an FPL easement that follows along that, the original property line boundary? Do we know?
Does it show on that survey?
I didn't see one on there, but
That FPL line is actually the lot line, straight up the back of all the houses.
yeah, going back up. And that to me, typically, that to me, I think would provide a reason for following the same line for the rest of the lots in the neighborhood, as if the FPL easement runs down there, because you'd want to keep the FPL easement in between the lots and not on one lot or the other. That to me would be a reason for not trying to move the lot line.
Living in the area, I can tell you that typically it's split between the two owners, 5.5 or 2.5 feet each. So
Yeah.
It's a great point.
Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak in favor of the project? Is there anyone against the project? And then we'll go into executive session. Comments? Would someone like to make a motion? Look like you're stuck, huh?
Okay. So I move that the Zoning Board of Appeals grant application number 3374, a request by Jason Schroeder for variance from section 94-304B2 of the Zoning and Land Development Regulations to allow for a 3.2-foot rear setback where a 5-foot minimum is required by code for an accessory building on a single-family residential lot for an option to split the lot. The motion is based on the testimony presented along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent and substantial evidence. The board hereby makes findings of fact that each of the criteria in Article 2, Section 94-38D6 of the City of West Palm Beach Zoning and Land Development Regulations have been met.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. Any comment from staff? None?
No comments.
That being said, I'd like to welcome Mr. Fields and Mr. Wood to the board, and we will see you all next month.
Thank you.